Mom. So in this video, we're going to talk about present subjunctives. And just as a quick reminder, subjunctive is a mood of a verb that's used to talk about things that are hypothetical or wished for or less than real. And again, today we're talking about present subjunctives. So to review, there are 4 conjugations of Latin verbs, and to identify the conjugation that a verb lives in, we look at the second principal part. At that present active infinitive. And specifically, we're looking at the letter that comes before the RE at the end of the word. And so for first conjugation, we have an ARE. For second, we have an ERE. For third, we have a short E. And for fourth, we have an I. And we use that information also to give us our present stems. And so in first conjugation, amara becomes ama, docera becomes doke, and audira becomes audi. And then remember, for third conjugation, that's the one that's different, and we have to go to our first principal part. So rego gives us reg, and capio gives us capi. So to form the present indicative, the one that you're used to doing, the formula was very simple. Present stem plus the endings, APE for the active voice and PPE for the passive voice. So to form the present subjunctive, we're just going to add one little step to that. We're going to take our present stem, and then we're going to execute a vowel change before we add on our endings. And then again, it'll be the APE for active voice and the PPE for the passive voice. So vowel change, what does that mean? Well, for a first conjugation, the A on the end of ama is going to become an E. Doke will become dokea, reg will become rega, capi, capia, audi, audia. And it will work in the same pattern for all of the verbs that live in these conjugations. So every first conjugation verb, that A will change to an E. So you're probably thinking to yourself, oh no, that's crazy. How am I ever going to remember that? Well, mnemonics to the rescue. The mnemonic device that I sort of grew up learning for Latin that has always worked for me is we beat a liar. And the way that this works is that each word in the phrase represents a conjugation. So we is the first word, so that's the first conjugation. And first conjugation, just like the word we, is going to have an E in the subjunctive. Second is going to have an EA, like beat. Third is going to have an A. And then fourth is going to have an IA. And actually, third IO verbs are also going to have an IA. If we go back to our last slide, you can see here it kept that I, so it became capia. So like I said, we beat a liar is the one that I learned Latin on, but there's actually a number of others, so you can choose whichever one speaks to you. Some other common ones are let's beat a giant, we eat fat friars, she reads a diary, Ben fears all liars, we eat caviar. There's also a couple of others that have a fifth word to represent that third IO conjugation, like he wears a diamond tiara. So in this one, right, he for first, wears for second, for third, diamond for third IO, and tiara for fourth. What I don't like about these examples is that there are extra vowels in there. The O in diamond, for example, and I found that sometimes students get confused and think that that O is representing one of the conjugations. But it's up to you. If Sam, Steams, Clams, and Siam works for you, then by all means, go with that. Or, of course, you could write your own, even more ridiculous mnemonic if you wanted to. So, here's an example with the verb amo, amara, amawi, amatus. We have our present stem, ama. We have our vowel change, which is ame, because amo is first conjugation, so we. So we know that that's an E. And then we're just going to tack on our active person endings. So amem, ames, amet, amemos, ametis, ament. And then I didn't write this one out, but if it were passive, then we would use just the passive person endings. So that would be a mayor, a mayoress, a mator, a mamor, a mamony, a mentor. So that's it. The only difference between the indicative and the subjunctive is that vowel change. One last thing we need to talk about is the verb to be. Just like it is in the indicative, the verb to be is irregular in the present subjunctive. It doesn't quite follow the normal rules. But actually, it's less irregular in the subjunctive. For the verb to be in the subjunctive, the formula is just si plus active person endings, which gives us the form sim, cis, sit, simus, situs, sint. And that's it. That's the present subjunctive. So now you should go ahead and fill out the next set of practice worksheets in your packet and let me know when you are ready for your check-in.